All right, good morning. We're going to be getting started. Welcome everyone to the People's Forum for Ward 5. Thank you all for being here this morning. My name is Shahari Arkowski. I'm the Executive Director of the Warehouse Worker Resource Center, and we are here as part of Just San Bernardino. And we're here as part of a collaboration along with KVCR and the League of Women's Voters for these nonpartisan forums in each of the 4 wards in San Bernardino that have elections coming up in the next month. Just to be clear, this is a nonpartisan forum. It's an opportunity for you all to hear from some candidates here in Ward 5. Just San Bernardino, KVCR, and League of Women's Voters are focused on making sure that you're hearing about the key issues in this ward and in the city, especially for Just SB related to economic justice and housing. The Just SB Collaborative is a collaborative of 7 organizations. Time for Change Foundation, Blue Educational Foundation, ICUC, COPE, Warehouse Worker Resource Center, Arts Connection, and the Inland Empire Labor Council. And speaking of the Labor Council, I'll pass it to Ricardo.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ricardo Cisneros. I'm the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Inland Empire Labor Council. The Inland Empire Labor Council is a coalition of 98 unions. We have over 396,000 members just in the Inland Empire. And of course, we cover San Bernardino County and Riverside County. One of the main goals in reference for us being part of Just SB and also for the Labor Council is to make sure that everyone's doing the right thing for our cities, that they're doing the right thing for our region. You know, there was a saying from Cesar Chavez, you know, during the strikes that they had, or the boycotts, that he said, it was never about the grapes, it was about the people. Here in these races, we gotta look at it the same way. It's not about these candidates, it's about the people, the constituents that live in these districts. And that's why we gotta make sure that we have forums like this, that we're able to talk to these candidates, ask questions, and then from there make an informative decision onto who's the right person to lead us to move forward to be better. Not to go backwards to the old Valdivia days, but to move forward and grow this city and make it be better than what it is now, better than what it was before. Folks say, let's bring this city back to its glory days. Why take it back to the glory days? Let's make it better than those glory days. And that's what these forums are all about. So I thank you all for joining in today and be informed, but be a participant within your district and being here to ask questions of these candidates. And on behalf of Just San Bernardino, we thank you all for being here today.
And with that, we'll pass it on to our moderator today, Lupe Camacho from the League of Women's Voters.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone. Good afternoon. Before we get started, I want to make sure that I inform the audience that about 5 minutes ago, Kim Knaus let us know that she will not be able to attend today's forum. We want to thank the candidates who are able to make the time for the community today. So we wanted to make sure that we notify everyone about that. All right, and with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. And since it's going to be a little bit lengthy forum, we've obviously chosen to sit during this event. So let me go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, almost good afternoon, and welcome to the series of conversations with San Bernardino City Council candidates competing in the 4 wards up for election on March 5th. This series is hosted by KVCR, a public media in San Bernardino, the League of Women Voters, a trusted source for voter information, and Just San Bernardino, a nonprofit collaborative focused on the future of San Bernardino. My name is Lupe Camacho, and I'm the Voter Services Chair for the League of Women Voters, San Bernardino area. And I'm also a longtime resident of the County of San Bernardino. And again, I will be your moderator for today, for today's candidate forum. Today we continue with the candidates from Ward 5. I'm currently joined by 3 of the 5 candidates, including Mr. Ben Reynoso, which is Councilmember Reynoso, Henry Nichols, and Rose Ward. The city of San Bernardino is uniquely positioned as the county seat in one of the largest and fastest growing regions in California. It is also the national hub for the warehousing and logistics industry, and the city is changing rapidly, recovering from bankruptcy. Today we have an hour and a half to get to know these candidates and their platforms a little bit better. The questions and topics we will cover this afternoon, were drafted with the input from community members. Before we get started, I would like to go through the ground rules for today's forum. Each candidate will have a set amount of time to respond to the questions. They will not address each other directly. We will open with a short statement and close with a closing statement from each candidate. All questions will be accepted at the registration table, as we will not be able to take the questions during the event. And please hold your applause until the end of the program. We also ask that the candidates, if they feel they would like to stand up when you answer the question, that is fine. But we'd like you to stay in your area just so that we do get a nice view of you for the camera. Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have 1 minute per candidate, and this first item is going to be the opening statements. So I'd like to open by letting the candidates briefly share a little about themselves, why they are running for city council, and their motives. We will start with Mr. Reynoso, Councilmember Reynoso.
Hi, everyone. Councilman Ben Reynoso. You elected me in 2020. Most of you did. Honestly, what brought me to run for city council was the lack of real representation, the authenticity that was never there in the city council. I heard a lot of things from a lot of places about a lot of stuff that never happened. And knowing the things that we needed to get done, like accountability around development, that restricted truck routes so we didn't have 18-wheelers rolling through our neighborhoods, that we had to have investment in our downtown events and our parks and rec, that we had to have rent control. Bold ideas like that people have been asking for. This is a city where over 50% of the constituents and the residents rent. So getting actual policy done and bringing it forward continuously until it's done, until there are other council members who are willing to have the backbone and the spine to get this done, is why we're here. That's a short list of things that we tried, but I wanted to mention some of them so that you know I'm unafraid to mention and go after the things that the people have been asking for forever. I am San Bernardino, I love San Bernardino, I'm damn proud to be from San Bernardino, and I ask for you to continue to keep me in office so we keep this representation real going forward.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. We will now follow with Mr. Nickel.
Hello, my name is Henry Nickel. I was born in San Bernardino. I bought my first and only home in San Bernardino. I attended Cal State, got my graduate degree in San Bernardino. And in 2013, there was an opportunity to run for city council, and in 2014, I was elected councilman for San Bernardino. At that time, San Bernardino was in the international headlines. We were bankrupt. The city was collapsing, falling apart. Our community was devastated, and we just did not have funding to keep the city going. A lot of people ask me, why would you ever run for city council when the city was in such disarray? That is the reason I ran. This is my home. And we worked very hard over years to get the city back on its feet. I'm proud to say that today, we can look back at bankruptcy in the past, and we now have an opportunity to look forward. We now have the resources and the means to move forward. And I look forward to your questions today on how we do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nickel. And now we follow with Ms. Ward.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rose Ward. I'm a neighbor just like you. I have 33 years of business experience with UPS, and I think that experience is transferable to the city council. And just like you, I want a better city that we can be proud of. So I don't have to say I live in San Bernardino and I'm on the north side. I want our city to be just like every other city that's grown, and we can do that together as long as we elect the right leadership. And I can bring that to our city council. So I ask you to give me your vote. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your questions, and thank you. So please elect me, and I appreciate everything that you can do to help us get this done together as your neighbor.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. We're going to go ahead and move on. We're going to go ahead and start with the topic of housing. According to CoreLogic, home prices in November were at or above all-time highs in our four regional counties: Orange County, San Bernardino County, San Diego, and Ventura. San Bernardino County's median home price rose by 12.9% to a record high of $519,500. Average rents have been steadily increasing and now average about $1,800 a month. The first question is for Mr. Nickel. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. What is your platform on housing? How would you ensure housing is affordable in the city?
Yeah, I believe home ownership is the way in which you achieve multi-generational wealth. You will never do that as a renter. One of the things that, the opportunities I had, and one of the reasons I came back to San Bernardino was because I had the opportunity to buy a home. I was 30 years old. At that time, I had been renting since college, lived many different places, and I realized that there was no way I was going to be able to move forward in life until I owned the home I lived in. And there's something that comes with home ownership that is very, very important. It roots you to the community you're in. And I think that's what we're missing in San Bernardino. We have over 50% of our residents are renters. That is a horrible number. I'm just going to be honest, that is a horrible number. You look at other communities around us, we talk about Fontana and Rancho and Redlands. Look at those home ownership rates. When I was first elected, one of our primary economists for this region, John Husing, asked to meet with me, and I sat down with him. We had a conversation, and he started educating me about what home ownership does in a community and how fundamentally important it is, and how we need to make sure we as a city have policies to help with down payments, to help with upgrading and maintaining homes. We have a lot of seniors that are losing their homes because they can't afford to maintain them. Okay, we also have the opportunity now to create what are called ADUs, which is accessory dwelling units. So I have a niece, a 17-year-old niece. Guess what we did this last year? We built an ADU on our home so we can keep our family together. That is how families grow. That's how families become strong. That's how families are maintained, is through ownership. This idea that you rent, your life is for rent, guess what? If you don't learn to buy, nothing you have is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel. We're going to go ahead and move on with Mrs. Ward.
We need affordable housing, but we don't need low-income housing. And I also think that rent control is something that will increase housing prices or rental prices, because when you allow rent control, that will just drive up the prices, because what you're going to have is homeowners raising the price of rents to match the price of what rent control is. So example, if you say that rent control is going to be 3%, that's going to make the homeowners raise the price of rent to 3% instead of allowing the natural price of rents to rise. So I don't believe in like rent control. And also we need more affordable houses to be built in our areas so that we can have more housing choices. When I came to San Bernardino, I bought my house because the price was affordable. And the prices of houses have gone up. And the fact that our interest rate is so high, that makes it even more unaffordable. So San Bernardino is one of the most affordable places in California. And we need to ensure that we keep on building in San Bernardino. And to do that, we need to ensure that we don't build more warehouses. So make sure that you're voting, and make sure you check to see who in the 5th Ward is electable, because you got people in the 5th Ward who are taking money, and that money's coming from people who are taking money from people who want to build warehouses. So make sure that you watch who you're voting for, check and see who those people are, and verify and check, use your vote. Affordable housing needs to be done, but we need that space to build in. Don't fill up the spaces with warehouses when that land can be used for affordable housing.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. And now we move on to Councilmember Reynoso.
First and foremost, we are behind on our housing by thousands. We need homes, period. We need about 8,000 homes to be built in this city, period. That's a restart. But it's a little discouraging to hear, some things said, because I am a renter. I'm 31 years old. I have a child. I'm supporting my family. We have 2 incomes, and we cannot afford a home. Do you think that's an anomaly? Do you think that's unique to just me, your sitting council member? No. My favorite conversations are with renters, because renters are connected to every facet of our lives, just like homeowners. But renters, like me, have student loans, have bills to pay that are not allowing me to catch up on anything, because next year, guess what? My landlord isn't held accountable to some standard of increase. I'm not talking about standards of increase. I'm talking about capping it like places have done, like Los Angeles. I know people who have lived there. I've got cousins who have been benefited, who have lived right off the 10 freeway in Santa Monica, who have never paid more than $1,100 a month since the 1990s. So she travels all the time. So she does have other properties. But you know what? She also has her rental. Why can't people here afford to stop paying so much of their income in order to live? They need to be able to afford homes. I would like to afford a home. Down payments on homes are ridiculous. I have, like I mentioned, student loans, because that's not an anomaly. I'm a young person. I represent everybody, but I understand the plight of young people in America. This isn't just San Bernardino. San Bernardino is a makeup of every single part of America. And trust me, I've got deep roots in the South and Mississippi, and I've lived there. I can speak comfortably and say what Mississippi and San Bernardino has in common is lack of affordability, lack of career employment opportunities, lack of mortgage-sustaining wages. These are things that will not come unless we are bold enough to try things like rent control. So I'm never going to stop until that happens. And tenants, first and foremost, just need to know their rights. That's where we are at San Bernardino.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. Now we will turn to the topic of jobs and the type of jobs the community needs. Everyone has 2 minutes, and we will start with you, Ward. What will you do to improve working conditions and quality of life in San Bernardino?
Well, first of all, we need to bring more jobs back. We need to bring our businesses back into the city. And I feel like the downtown is one place to start, because as a person, I don't even like being in the downtown. That area is just filled with crime and homelessness. We need to clean our city up so that businesses want to be in San Bernardino. And that's one area as a city council person I would work at. We need to ensure that in the north end we have the police patrolling our area. And one good thing is we have businesses that are starting to come back into our north end, with building up with 3 areas of business with the Panera, Chick-fil-A, and Dutch Brothers. So we need more businesses coming into the north end. But to increase that, we need better businesses, not just a couple of food areas, but we need businesses, not warehouses, again, the warehouses, but we need businesses that want to come in. So that's what we need to increase on, just businesses in general.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ward. Now we pose that same question to Councilmember Reynoso. What will you do to improve working conditions and the quality of life in San Bernardino?
Well, first and foremost, one of the most important things to me is making sure that workers feel represented. So it's not just about being on a strike line and a picket line, but it's about talking regularly with workers inside of some of the largest employers in our region. A lot of people think maybe I just am so focused and hyper concentrated on Amazon, but it's because they have over 30,000 employees in the region. And I don't know about you, but besides Cal State San Bernardino and the federal government downtown, they are the largest employers. And so it's easiest to use them as a model for keeping working conditions better, or making working conditions better. But talking about the elephant in the room, we were having a discussion earlier about automation. A lot of these facilities are going to be automated, and they're testing it to make it automated. So what does the future look like? Are we training students to be AI engineers? Are we training students to program as much as we should? No. But those are the things that you kind of have to encourage, not only through partnerships with Valley College and Cal State San Bernardino and our high schools, but just with the community and asking for that. I don't get to go to the same school that students get to go to anymore. I'm not a high school student. I'm not a college student. I can advocate as much as possible, but I can also encourage, and this is something that's unique of being an organizer. A lot of people maybe didn't like that the first time around when I was running, but I think maybe now you might appreciate the skill set in encouraging people to use their power on their local levels, such as the institutions they reside at, work at, become educated at, to go to the faculty, to teach young students. I teach young students how to get better lunch options at their schools, because people just need the basic fundamentals of how to approach the boss, if you will. And so we have to lure more green engineering jobs. That's something that I've been passionate about for a long time, and something that's caused me to lose some endorsements, to be honest, is trying to pause warehouse development, because I'm never gonna vote for another warehouse, because the more warehousing that we have in this city, the less opportunity we have for a more diverse employment community and just more career employment opportunities in general. And so we need a backbone, like I mentioned. You'll hear that several times. I need other support on the dais. I need you to vote across town and tell your friends across town to vote for better candidates to reflect the benefits and the things that San Bernardino needs.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. And now we go with Mr. Nickel.
One of the things I failed to mention in my intro is my day job is workforce development. I work for the county. I'm an analyst. My job is to look at labor market data for the county. So every day I'm looking at our labor market. I'm looking at the skills that are needed. I'm looking at the jobs that are available, the industries that are growing, the industries that are declining, the occupations that are growing, the occupations that are declining. Guess what? San Bernardino has great jobs. We have very high-paid jobs here. But guess what? The people that have those jobs, they don't live here. Why? Well, it's tied to the last question we had. Housing, the quality of our community. This gets back to a fundamental problem we have in this city, which is dysfunction. We are a dysfunctional city. We're not a city that's lacking in resources. We're not a city that's lacking in opportunity. We are not a city that's lacking in wealth. We are a city that's lacking in functional community. And that's what we need. And we need a functional council that can do something that's very important for any city that's going to be successful. Plan. There's a saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. We've been planning to fail for decades in this city. Why? Because I think we got lazy. We got happy with what we had. And once we lost it, we didn't know what to do. And folks, we've got to get back on track. We have very high-paid jobs downtown. Those people leave at 5 o'clock every day. I see them, they're in my office. These are people that make six-figure incomes. They're gone at the end of the day. So what people are getting the jobs that live here? They're getting the low-paid jobs. But why? Because we haven't looked at how we attract the people into this community that can bring that wealth and bring those resources that are going to make our community better. That requires planning, that requires vision, that requires looking forward, not backward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the topic of development. For these questions that we're going to ask, the first question is going to be a yes or no question, and then the second question you'll be able to elaborate for a minute. There's a lot of construction, redevelopment, and new development in the area. One of the important roles of the City Council is to approve major development projects and create a vision and guideline for the city. On this topic, we have a couple of questions, and so we're going to look for a yes or no answer on the first one, and then if you would like to elaborate, you can elaborate as well a little bit. We have a little bit of time. Do you think there should be a moratorium on warehouse and industrial developments in the city? And we're going to pose it to Ms. Ward first.
Yes.
Councilmember Reynoso, do you believe that there should be a moratorium on the warehouse industrial developments in the city?
Yes, and I brought it forward, and I'll continue to do so.
Mr. Nickel, do you think that there should be a moratorium on the warehouse and industrial
I don't believe in
development?
moratoriums at all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nichols. The next question, and we're going to go ahead and get started with Mr. Nickel. As the city is exploring Carousel Mall redevelopment and the possibility of becoming a master developer, do you support a community benefits agreement? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Ward,
What was the question?
as the city is exploring Carousel Mall redevelopment and the possibility of becoming a master developer, do you support a community benefits agreement?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Reynoso.
Absolutely, and we'll continue to advocate for it.
Thank you. And this last one, what is your position establishing binding and meaningful community benefit agreements and community workforce agreements on new economic developments such as in the Carousel Mall? And we're going to go ahead and go with Councilmember Reynoso.
This is a yes or no?
No, it's the one you elaborate. So
Yeah.
how do you feel about that? What's your position?
And I believe we need to have community benefit agreements for any major development anywhere in the city, period, because we need to know not only that the infrastructure surrounding a project, that was like the real inspiration when you talk about a community benefits agreement. It's like, hey, they're just doing the sidewalk to the middle of the street at best, or their driveway at best. We needed to go beyond that, and then the conversations opened up well before I was in office about prioritizing small businesses around there and in these development headquarters, making sure that the wages that come with this, when you're talking about a community workforce agreement, that these are union jobs, and if the people who are employed there somehow are not union, that they're matching the union wage, that the working conditions on these projects are safe, equitable, and making sure that people aren't getting hurt in a way that has been historic in this city in particular. But I think when you're talking about community benefits agreement more than anything, we're trying to make sure that we set a precedent here, not only in the Inland Empire, but San Bernardino as a major seat in the county, that when you develop something, you have to give back to the community in which you build in. And that's the premise and whole thesis of a community benefits agreement, so absolutely.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. And now Mr. Nickel.
Yeah, I worked in transportation for 8 years before I worked in workforce development. And one of the frustrations I had was how many of these contractors that do a lot of these big public works contractors hire employees that are coming in from Orange County and LA. I was like, wait a minute, this is our money. This is money that we pay in state and federal taxes, local taxes, and now it's being used to pay people that don't even live here. That's exporting our money, folks, okay? Anybody who has a fundamental grasp of economics knows you keep doing that time and time and time and time again, you're gonna be broke, okay? If we keep taking our tax dollars and giving it away to surrounding communities, surrounding counties, sometimes out of state. We have people that come out of state to do work. That's wrong. Economically, that doesn't work. So just on a basic economic principles, yes, you have to have some mechanism to make sure that money that we pay in taxes gets back into this community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel. Mrs. Ward.
Yes, you need to have a community benefits agreement because our money, the city council and the mayor notoriously give our money out to other cities surrounding us. And I need that money to stay. That tax money is our money. It needs to stay in our community and our neighborhood and benefit our city. Our money needs to stay within our city, period. End of discussion. And I want to see that. And anything that's voted on needs to be up for our city to see and our neighbors and constituents to see. And I would want to see that in any meeting prior to any signing of any contract.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. We're going to go ahead and move on to the topic of environmental justice. Unfortunately, we know that the communities in the Inland Empire, specifically San Bernardino, suffer from some of the worst air quality in the nation. We need a holistic and dedicated plan to improve air quality to help residents here. To end that, I want to ask you about your plans to support environmental goals. So I want to ask you a few yes or no questions. And we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to go with Miss Ward first, and then follow with Councilmember Reynoso, and then Mr. Nickel. Will you require new development to include cost-effective measures to reduce energy usage through electrification, including appliances for heating and cooking? Mrs. Ward?
No.
Councilmember Reynoso?
Yes.
Mr. Nickel?
Look at housing costs. You want it to be more expensive? No.
Thank you. Will you require
development projects to preserve areas for native tree planting. Mrs. Ward?
Yes.
Councilmember Reynoso?
Yes.
Mr. Nichol?
It depends. I mean, it depends on the excess of the requirements. I mean, sure, if it's not excessive and doesn't add to the cost.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nichol. And the third one, will you require new parking lots to add electric vehicle charging stations and infrastructure for commercial and residential use? Mrs. Ward?
Repeat the question, the second part.
Will you require new parking lots to add electric vehicle charging stations, infrastructure for commercial and residential use?
Yes.
Councilmember Reynoso?
Yes, the future of California is electric.
Mr. Nichol?
Adding to the costs, I will not require it. The market will dictate whether it needs it or not.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nichol. Now I will give each of you 1 minute on public transportation. And if you would increase access and ensure that there is equitable access to transit in the city. So that's 1 minute for each of you. And let me take a real quick look. So the main question is, would you increase access and ensure that there is equitable access to transit in the city? And we're going to go ahead and begin with Councilmember Reynoso.
Yes, absolutely. I think that SBX was an attempt to do that. I think it's caused more of an issue than a benefit to the city. I think that we have to have things along the main corridor. I think that we got ahead of ourselves with developing that, because if there was a lot of small businesses along East Street, I think we would have had a lot more people benefiting from free public transit. But I would like to, very lofty ideas down the line, like our downtown, when we do redevelop it, it'd be really cool to have an electric trolley down there and things like that. In cities like New Orleans, that's totally free. You just get on it, you ride around. The opportunity to expand when we have a Metrolink, we have 2 stations here in our city, to be on some kind of program to figure out how we can incentivize free transit through Metrolink so that people are going to and from, because a lot of people do come into the city to work, but a lot of people are also leaving because of the work opportunities that aren't here. And so I want to make sure that that's not breaking their back to travel in and out of the city. But yeah, I don't think that we have a lot of the backbone really to develop the electric infrastructure that we need for public transit yet, but I would like to champion that.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. Now, Mr. Nichol, if you would increase, and the question is, would you increase access and ensure that there is equitable access to transit in the city?
Well, first of all, the city doesn't have a transit agency. That's done regionally. So we have to work in conjunction with our fellow cities within this region to develop a transit plan. I think that's where the city's failed. I think we are not currently at the table to the degree we should be. Having worked in transit, I know for a fact San Bernardino just simply hasn't been functional enough to really capture all the opportunities that are available to us. But should the city be subsidizing existing transit? I'm not certain that's a long-term sustainable, viable option. But if there's a mechanism to do that in a way that achieves economic growth and stability, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nichol. Mrs. Ward, same question.
I grew up with a single mom who used public transportation every day to get to work and to take me to the beach or anywhere I needed to go. So I think that this is something that we need as a city. And I would say that we need to work with the infrastructure that we have to make it different and better. I know that that bus that goes with two lane or two whatever that thing is that has 2 pieces together doesn't work. That needs to be revamped. People who need transportation should be able to have it and use it, because as a person who grew up that way, people who need to get on a bus and go somewhere to get to work should have that available. So what we have isn't working. We need to get that fixed for those people who need to get to work. I had an employee who took the bus to work every single day. That needs to be available. So we need to revamp what we have so it's fixed and working for those people who need transportation.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Let's turn now to arts and culture. We have a yes or no question to start and then a more detailed question that will follow. We'll start with Mrs. Ward. And you each have 2 minutes for the follow-up question. Will you commit to reinstate cultural development funding and grant programs.
Yes, this is one of the reasons that I decided to run. I had a customer who said, San Bernardino, you guys are known for your arts. He was shipping a piece of art and asked where I lived, and he had a daughter who lived in Germany and said, you are known for art, and I'm gonna be at your festival in San Bernardino. And I thought, what an amazing concept that San Bernardino is known for art, and somebody who lives so far away knows about San Bernardino. He said, you are God's gift to my daughter. And can you get this from Germany to me so I can be there and I'll see you at that festival? People don't know about us, but somebody in Germany knew about San Bernardino. We are on the map, yet most people don't know about that, except people who are involved in art. And he said, you are the gateway to Big Bear. I mean, this person, we're on the map, but people don't know about it. Let's get us back on that map. So of course, we need to be known for our art festival. We need to be known for how wonderful our history is. I would definitely support that. If a customer of mine is shipping to get 16 portraits here that his daughter created in Germany for that festival, we should be known for that. I would definitely support that.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Councilmember Reynoso.
Can you repeat the question? And it's a yes or no, and we're going to have a later.
Yes.
Okay.
It was going to be a yes or no. That's correct. There will be a more detailed question in a minute. Will you commit to reinstate cultural development funding and grant programs?
Yes, and we have. Not as much as we can, but I'll talk more about that in a second.
Okay. And Mr. Nickel.
A very conditional yes.
Thank you very much. The follow-up question, and you can elaborate on this, and we'll start again with Mrs. Ward. How will you support the arts and the creative economy in San Bernardino?
I believe I already answered that, so I'll skip that.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Councilmember Reynoso?
So we have an incredible Parks and Recreation director. I grew up with a lot of artists who didn't have outlets. So, you know, sometimes they tried their artwork in public areas, and it wasn't the best venue for sure. But it was an acknowledgement that one day there has to be some kind of way that we can encourage this in a way that benefits society. And that looks like encouraging an arts district in our downtown, first and foremost. That's something that we need. Every major, incredible city has an arts district. It's an incredible place to go, to explore, to learn more, not only about the community, but about yourself. I've had the privilege of being around tons of artists my entire life. I consider myself an artist, more of the spoken word and writing, but something that we've done in the city is small art grants. And so this is one of those organizer tricks again. I know that if we had an influx of people who applied for a small pot of money, that the city would have to repeatedly come back to us and ask, okay, we need to up that budget. We had 25 requests for $25,000, and we only planned to give it out to 3 people. But the reality was, in one of these, I was informed by a Parks and Rec director, we had about 180 applications. And these are just people that I had known and people who had spread the word, because we need to get the money into our artist community. This is a place full of entrepreneurs. San Bernardino is full of hustlers, entrepreneurs, people who want to make it no matter what, but we have this gift, and I consider it a blessing, that we're not able to sacrifice what is most important to us, what's most passionate about us. And a lot of times that's artists. And artists feel like, I want to be able to paint, I want to be able to get paid for it. I'm getting emotional because I got friends who still are not making the money they should be making. And to be an artist, think about the revolutions of society historically. Everything that we've known in the history of man and mankind, it's been fueled and stemmed by arts from one form or another. San Bernardino is no different. We're on the cusp of a renaissance here. We just need to provide the format, the location, when I'm talking downtown and across our city. But we started with little small things like the little electric boxes. And I know they're all Star Wars right now, but that provides the opportunity for artists to come and decorate our city in a way that encourages more young people to not give up on their dreams, to not just become something because they have to not find that burnout at Amazon to be too much because, you know what, they can get paid for their art on the side at least while they try to make a living in this city. So yes.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. And now, Mr. Nickel.
Well, let me just start by saying I'm a strong advocate for the arts. worked in theater. I spent a lot of my youth in theater. I've been on the boards of some of our local theaters, and I believe in the arts. I think the arts are absolutely fundamental to a thriving, vibrant community. That said, the city's not a piggy bank, folks, and there's some people, unfortunately, that think that way. One of the things you learn when you study economics is this concept called seed corn. Okay, what is seed corn? Well, that's the corn you put aside that you don't eat, but you use it to grow more corn. To me, the city should be providing the seed corn. Here's the thing, folks. Our city is eligible for money all across the country. I sit on the board of a national organization called Neighborhoods USA. I joined that organization years ago, after I became a council member, to understand best practice. And I was able to visit other communities. I've been to Detroit, I've been to Omaha, I've been to Memphis, I've been to parts of the country that are even worse than San Bernardino, that have had worse times than we have. And what do? Well, they have thriving arts communities, but how do they do it? Well, the city provides a seed corn. It says, look, you can use this money. In many cases, there are many philanthropic organizations. A lot of them want to give us money. But what they need is a matching grant. They have what are called matching grants. You provide 10%, they provide 90%. Every artist that comes to us should be trained on how to leverage the money that we have. And that was my position as a councilman. You need to use this money to leverage the money that we can get in the city. Let's not have $10,000 in grant money available. Let's leverage it into $100,000 per artist. Why don't we think that way, folks? We're so myopic in this town. We need to have vision. We need to understand what opportunities we have. That's why I say we are not poor, we think poor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the topic of accountability and community engagement. Given the history in San Bernardino corruption and bankruptcy, most notably, there is a distrust of elected leaders in the city. To that end, I want to ask you about your approach to accountability. We will start with Councilmember Reynoso.
My approach to accountability.
Yes, to accountability.
It's pretty broad. For keeping myself accountable is honestly talking to people regularly. I'm actually to my own detriment, believe it or not. I know I don't open up my posts on Nextdoor, but I know that you've all probably seen them. Because the reason why is I've been legally advised not to open the conversation. First and foremost, because of I could say something on accident, obviously there on a neighborhood application, but more so that people don't just use it as a forum to just talk about any and everything random underneath something that was just trying to get information across. Trying to provide regular updates. I've done something very creative. I'm a young person, so social media has been our bread and butter. We boost stuff all the time, and maybe you're not all on social media. And so what we need to do more of, and we didn't get to do until honestly we had a really great interim city manager, was more town halls. And as soon as we tried them, unfortunately, we had some of my colleagues who were crying that it was favoritism, and specifically towards black council members. And they had also benefited from the same service, but it was something that didn't need to divide us further. And so I stepped off. I said, okay, you know what? I'm not gonna ask for that right now, and especially election season. I don't want people to think that I'm just taking advantage by having town halls during election season, because that's not cool. But I think for the broader question of keeping myself accountable is, not only do I live here, and I hope that you've seen my passion and feel it in my voice when I speak, but I cannot deny what I owe San Bernardino. I owe authentic representation in a way that is just totally unapologetic. It's things that you've told me time and time again that I need to get done. And so when I tell you I'm going to get something done, I'm going to get it done, and I'm never afraid to go back to you, even when it's not done yet, to tell you, hey, you know what? I didn't promise it, but I know it's still going to get done, and this is where we are right now. And I try to lay out the entire picture so people can understand the landscape without asking for any excuses or any forgiveness or anything like that. I lost my dad and became a dad during this first term, and it hasn't been easy. But it's inspired me more than ever to be like my dad, to go out there and just do any and everything I can to keep people accountable, and that includes myself. And if nothing else, my term has been an exposure piece, for sure.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. I know we lost track a little bit of the time. The question was originally for 1 minute, but I think we went a little bit over, but not a problem. It's okay. And we will afford you the same courtesy, the other two candidates. Again, given the history of San Bernardino with the corruption and the bankruptcy, most notably in the recent years, obviously, there's been a distrust in the elected leaders of the city. To that end, I want to ask about your approach to accountability. And we're going to go ahead and move on with Mr. Nickel.
Yeah, well, I think there is a real deficit in San Bernardino, and it's not an economic deficit. It's a deficit of trust. I think that is the thing that I realized when I first ran, and I went out door to door and started meeting people. People just don't trust. They don't trust each other. They don't trust their electeds. They don't trust what's happening. And that's dangerous, because if you don't have trust, you cannot have a functional community, period. If you don't have trust, you will never, ever have a functional community. So, just so you know, I'm self-financed. I realized when I ran the first time, once you start accepting money from different groups and different donors, people say, oh, well, I'm not going to vote. You know, it's not going to affect my vote. It will affect your vote. It will affect what you do. And I've seen it on the faces of council members when you are in a very conflicted situation where you know you have to make a decision either against the people you represent or against the people that financed your election. And I've seen sweat on the brows of council members because they know they have to make a choice. Okay, I'm self-financed. You are my boss, okay? I work for you. So what did I do as a council member? From day one, I said, you know what, before every council meeting, guess what? We're going to go through the agenda together, you know, and I'm just going to take it. You guys tell me what you like, what you don't like. You can yell at me all you want. I'll be honest, the first few times we did, it got pretty rough because the city was in bankruptcy. Nobody liked the decisions we were having to make. But guess what happened over time? People started coming back, and we started having conversations. We go through those agendas, and we talk about the big ticket items we had made, and we could actually start having conversations. And people that didn't like each other, guess what? They started talking to each other. And they did, what developed? Well, they didn't necessarily agree, but guess what? We started to develop trust. I could say, look, you may not agree with this. We may have some problems with this decision, but this is what we're facing. We have to make sure council members are meeting with their constituents before every council meeting to ensure that we're doing the work you've elected to us and that we understand you are our boss.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel. Same question to you, Mrs. Ward.
Okay, part of being accountable is being honest, having integrity, transparency, and trust. If I were elected, I work for my constituents. The vote is not mine. That vote belongs to the constituents. And as Henry said, I'm self-financed. I don't have anybody giving me donations, and I don't have anybody from the mayor's office giving me money. And right now, I see that it seems to be that there's 4 hand-picked people for each ward. And that's kind of scary. Those are yes votes, so that there can be 7 yes votes. And I have only me running for you. I won't owe any favors. I don't owe anybody anything. When you take money, when you're bought, you're bought. And those favors, when somebody gives you $5,500, they're going to be calling you up saying, hey, I donated money. You owe me. You owe me something. I don't owe anybody anything, and that's holding yourself accountable. You hold yourself accountable to the people. My vote is my vote, but when I run for an office, that vote is no longer mine. It's ours. And the vote is for the people, for the constituents. The vote comes for the neighborhood, for our ward. That's how you hold yourself accountable. When we all walk in and we ask for our city council to vote, it's no longer a me vote, it's an our vote. They represent us. We pay the salary for our city council member. That's how you hold yourself accountable.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Now we're going to go ahead and have a question with regards to ranked choice voting. The city's Charter Review Committee and Redistricting Commission have recommended support for ranked choice voting and establishing an independent redistricting commission by 2030 to the mayor and the council. Do you support ranked choice voting? And this is a yes or no question. And we're going to begin with Mr. Nickel.
A qualified maybe.
Thank you. And we'll move on with Mrs. Ward.
Maybe.
All right. Councilmember Reynoso.
Yes, and I think there needs to be a lot more education on it because in a race like ours with 5 opponents, I think it's ideal.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. All right, and we're going to enter now what we call the lightning round. And this is sort of to get to know the candidates a little more deeply. We know that we're getting towards the end this afternoon, and so we want to allow candidates to show a little bit more of their personality. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each of these questions. So we're going to move on with the first one. What is your favorite spot in the ward? And we will begin with Councilmember Reynoso.
That's tough. Oh, man. I've got 2. One of my favorite ones is a place that I've had to deal with police presence is actually the top of Ridgeline. I like to look out over the top of Ridgeline. It's not a place that you should be, parking your cars and stuff. But really my favorite spot, I want to be honest about that. My favorite spot, I guess that's legal to go visit, is in the foothills of Cal State San Bernardino. Right up, you keep going up Little Mountain. There's a little walking trail right there, and you go up the top. And you can see everything from my old high school, Cajon right there, to Little Mountain. And you can see a lot of the south side through like the East Street side and then the right of Little Mountain right there. And it's because I can see everywhere in the entire ward. And I feel like me and my family, I always show my family when they come down, it's like, don't you feel like you're on top of the world right now? And that's what San Bernardino has to offer, is just like these incredible landscapes. And so I would say for sure in the foothills of Cal State San Bernardino at the top of the walking trail, right before that bend, for sure.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. And we'll pose the same question. What is your favorite spot in the ward, Mr. Nickel?
Yeah, it's similar to Ben. I lived in near Blair Park, so I like to climb the hiking trail up to the top of the hill there. And same thing. I just enjoy going up there. I usually take a jog in the morning or a hike in the morning, and it's just very refreshing. This is really a great place to live, folks. I've lived a lot of places, and every time I go up there, I just sort of take it all in and say, this is a great place. And it's a shame that we face some of the challenges we have, but it's just it's really remarkable. We really live in a remarkable part of the country, a remarkable part of the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel. Mrs. Ward.
Actually, my house, because I'm at the top of the hill. I'm Miramonte and Grande Vista. I get to work from home. My desk is my bay window at the kitchen table. I get to watch Cajon High School marathon runners run by in the morning when they do their race. I get to watch coyotes in the backyard, and they just had puppies or babies. I don't know what they're called. Pups. I get to watch raccoons when they are running around. I get to watch rabbits and the hawks when they're flying. I could tell you when the 215 is backed up or it's not backed up, and I get to see all of that from the top of the hill. That's why I bought my house. It's a little piece of that hill, 20,000 square feet, and it's wonderful and beautiful, and nobody knows that it's like a little piece of Glendora or Claremont or anything right there in the top of the hill, and it was affordable. Beautiful and affordable, and San Bernardino.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Thank you. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to some audience questions. We did collect audience questions, so we're going to move on to that now. We're going to give each candidate 1 minute to answer each question, and we will go through as many questions as we can until we get to about 6 or 7 minutes before 12:30, which is our cutoff time, so that we give you a chance to do your closing statement at that time, okay? So we're going to go ahead and get started, and the order that we're going to go in is Mr. Nickel, you will be first, Mrs. Ward, you will be second, and Councilmember Reynoso, you will be third. So here is the first question, and again, you get 1 minute to answer the question. There has been a lot of talk about quality jobs and how people who have higher paid jobs don't choose to live in the city. Do you support and are willing to move forward a local hire ordinance for any business/developer choosing to do business here? How can you make this happen?
Just make the city better. Again, we aren't a resource deficient city. We're a city that has resources. We have opportunities. We just haven't seized on them to the degree we have, and we have not planned ahead. We're very transactional in this city, and I notice it with our politics, I notice it with our people, I notice it with our businesses. We don't think 10, 20 years ahead many times. We're thinking about what's the next project we can get done. How quick can we get that project done and get some contributions back so I can get reelected next cycle? I mean, that's the way we think. That's honestly the way the people, majority, honestly think on the council. And that's not vision. And how do we reverse that? Well, it's a combination of things. It's, again, accountability. We've talked about that. But I think it's also ensuring that our council understands what their real job is. Our job is to create and then enact a vision for the next 10, 20 years. We have to start thinking that way. Stop thinking transactionally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel. Now, Mrs. Ward.
Once you plan for a better city with better infrastructure, affordable housing, the jobs and the businesses will come. When you clean up the downtown and you provide a better downtown, the businesses will come. Once we have affordable housing that people can afford to buy into, the people will come. That's what we need to do. Plan for the future, not just 1 year or 2 years ahead, but plan for 5 years and 10 years ahead. People will come and the businesses will come. That's how you plan for higher jobs, higher paying jobs, and better, the better businesses to come, is we clean up our city and we make it where it's business friendly and people friendly. The people will come once we clean up our city and we make it where people want to be here. That's all we need to do, is plan for the future, not 1 year ahead, not 2 years ahead, but 5 years ahead and 10 years ahead. We need to just provide the infrastructure so that the people are safe and ready to be here.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Councilmember Reynoso.
I think one of the first ways that you can ensure that people are hired locally is through a community benefits agreement and things like community workforce agreements. That was asked in a question earlier. Something we have in our region is a lot of temporary employment agencies who are bringing in contractors, et cetera, to come in, develop these massive projects. So it's about setting a precedent and changing the narrative for the development community here in San Bernardino so that 10 years from now they know when they come, hey, come ready to negotiate how many local hires you're going to guarantee the city. But I think that we have to initiate a first community benefits agreement around the Carousel Mall and the downtown redevelopment, because what comes from that will become the education that we not only receive as policymakers, but our staff receives when sitting down with the developer and we hear how they try to finesse us out of the amount of local hires that we came to the table with. If we start off with 60 and they're not willing to compromise above 40%, maybe that's not a developer we need, but also we have to have the political will to increase limits like that so eventually everybody's hired locally. It might not sound realistic, but we have to think, just like my other colleagues here are saying, this is a long game. You have to think about way down the line, but you have to also remember where to begin. And it looks like community workforce agreements, community benefit agreements.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. We're going to move on to the next question. How prepared is the city of San Bernardino to embrace a green transition in transportation, electrification, and climate resilience, including community solar projects? What do you promote or expand programs? What would you do to promote or expand programs for just a transition? Mr. Nichols?
I think there's already a lot of programs in place that, unfortunately, I think a lot of our residents aren't taking advantage of. I just mentioned that I just built an ADU on our home. We also put in solar. I just bought a Tesla, so I'm putting in all the charging for that. But what troubles me is, again, the city is one piece of this puzzle. And we always think of the city. Well, these types of programs, these types of decisions are made on a regional basis. And I think what you have to understand, you have to have council members that understand how to work within the regional institutions that we have to collaborate on to bring these types of resources to the city. The city alone does not have a transit agency, but we are a member of the existing entity that is SBCTA. Unfortunately, other cities are much more adept at leveraging the resources of SBCTA than we are, because we're constantly fighting amongst each other. So we never have a coherent strategy on how to leverage those regional resources. We have to get better at that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nichol. Mrs. Ward?
What was the question again?
How prepared is the city of San Bernardino to embrace a green transition in transportation, electrification, and climate resiliency, including community solar projects? What would you do to promote or expand programs for just a transition?
Okay. As Henry said, the city is not like part of all of that. So we need to make sure that we're sharing the resources that are available. And we can promote that by using our city website and add a link into that. Also, we can share the rebates that are available. For example, when I got my solar system, we could share the rebates that are available through SCE, and we could add that into our link on our city website. So some of that city, like Henry said, the money is not always there from the city. So we can't always just use the pockets of the city. Otherwise, that'll put us right back into bankruptcy. So the city is not just full of pockets to take from for rebates and stuff like that, but sharing those rebates that are available through SCE, that's easy to do. Just add the links, send out flyers, and give those resources to the people that are not using that. That would help our residents to go forward with adding greenery to their projects as they're doing home improvements.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Councilmember Reynoso.
I think that solar is obviously the way with the amount of sunshine that we do have here. But one thing that myself and Councilman Alexander championed when we first came in was the electrification of our city fleet, just as a model for where the city's going, where the state is going, where reality is for us as Californians. But I think more than anything that rebate programs are there and available, SoCal Edison. I hope that a lot of you have enjoyed the new LED lighting in the neighborhoods. It's much brighter now. It's also on a shorter circuit, though. As you've seen, a lot of the lights are out. So there's some things we need to figure out when it comes to energy efficiency. But also, one of the more, I guess, controversial ideas that I've had, and I had it the first time, is we have to get with our environmental justice partners because of the kind of natural populations of field mice and things like that that exist, because something I still want and I feel like the city needs. I've actually, believe it or not, I've actually published energy studies in undergrad. But one of them was on wind power. And I think that it's foolish to not figure out how to embrace wind power when our fences are being blown down once a month because of the Santa Ana winds and constant winds. So we have to be creative. I'm sorry, but yeah.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. We're going to move on to the next question. What will you do in support of a City Hall seismic retrofit? Mr. Nichol?
Yeah, and I may be guilty for having instituted some of this, because when I got on the council, one of our former building commissioners came to me and said, "Henry, did you know that this city hall is seismically unsound?" I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "We did studies years ago, and the city is built in such a way that it cannot withstand a significant size earthquake with an epicenter at or near downtown." I said, "I didn't know anything about that." And sure enough, we started dusting off these old studies. The city's great at doing studies and then throwing them back on the shelf and forgetting about them. Well, I went to the city manager, and sure enough, yes, and they did another study and confirmed what the other study had already told us. Yes. The fact of the matter is that city hall is so seismically unsound, it would cost us probably 5 or 6 times to retrofit than to rebuild it in a way that was seismically sound. So unfortunately, folks, we're in a situation where our city hall will collapse in a major quake, and to fix it is going to cost us much more than just rebuilding it.
Thank you, Mr. Nichol. Mrs. Ward?
From what I've heard, that city hall is a historic monument. So I would want to do a study on how much it would actually cost to retrofit it before I just go forward and say that we need to take it down. I would want to see how much the cost is in terms of having it rebuilt somewhere else, another one actually rebuilt, and then compare the two, the cost of a new building and the cost to refurbish it before I would go forward with demolishing a future historical monument. I mean, that City Hall has history. Before we just tear it down and get rid of it, I want to see both studies side by side. And that's what I have to say about that, because that's one of our buildings that has history. Don't just tear it down. Don't get rid of our history. Let's see the studies and see the costs before we get rid of it.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Councilmember Reynoso.
Yeah, we actually had a special study session, if you will, and some of the council members felt blindsided because of the plans that seem like they're pretty much ready to go, but it's a study session, and he's asking us not to take action. But the number, $75 million to retrofit it, to seismically retrofit it. It is a historic building. My first experiences with civic engagement, I was 14 years old, going into that council chambers, pissed off at council members and the mayor back then. Not much has changed. But since then, I've come to just honestly dream about the city having the ability to go back into that building and just really marvel at what that is when it was fully occupied, when you have a one-stop shop. Now we have the city departments spread out all over the place. And although we could build a new building, I believe there's a lot of federal funding. I have to educate the city manager myself, apparently, because we've had state assembly members, state senators who are saying, hey, this is a major project, Ben. Like, why isn't your city manager, why isn't your economic development staff talking to us about the funding that can be allocated? Because we've got the money for it. We do stuff like this all over the place. We're building new city halls all over Southern California. So it's our time. I'm not discouraged by that number. Things are always going to be expensive. I do want to keep that building and seismically retrofit it.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. Next question. What will you do if elected to reach out to your constituents on a regular, ongoing basis and keep the 5th Ward informed of their concerns and the goings-on in City Hall, and how often will you do it? I'm sorry, Mr. Nickel.
Hello. I did it as a council member. We did meetings before every council meeting, folks. Why isn't every council member in the city doing the same thing right now? Why? They don't want you to know what's going on. They're afraid to listen to you. They're afraid to face their constituents. Why? They're conflicted, folks. The only way you're going to hold your council members accountable is demand that they meet with you before they make those decisions that affect our lives. Come on, that's just basic common sense. Why aren't we doing that? I will do it again. It worked. We got our city out of bankruptcy. We got through some really tough decisions and some tough times. We actually have money to use now. We're talking about how to spend money tonight. If we had this conversation 10 years ago, we were talking about what else do we need to cut? Who else do we need to fire? What other department needs to be eliminated? We aren't talking about that today, folks. Why? Because we had accountability. Get back to it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel. Mrs. Ward?
I would be using the different platforms available on social media, YouTube, Facebook, Nextdoor, TikTok for those younger people because they're out there. And my daughter would be my social media manager. That's her job. She does that. I would be having town hall meetings with my constituents. And I also work from home, so I'm able to just adjust my schedule as needed because I can do that with my job. I can take my laptop, I can work wherever I want. I can adjust my schedule and work my 8 to 10 hours whenever and however I want. And I could take time off as needed and just adjust that schedule for my constituents. And that's how I would meet with my people and just tell them, let's meet on this agenda before the meeting. And that's how I would reach out to my people. And you know what? I would ask my neighbors, how do you want to meet? Because you know what? It's not about me. It's about you. How do you want to meet to discuss the agenda?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Councilmember Reynoso?
Yeah, I think something that I didn't get to do as much as I would have liked to do is quarterly town halls, first and foremost, rotating throughout the ward, because I was aware of some of the meetings that were mentioned before, but having the same 10 people there over and over doesn't really bear community results. I think a lot of people would be surprised by the kind of people, because we're running for office again. I'm running for office again. The kind of people who are out there knocking on doors for me they're very young people. I've been engaging everyone, but especially very young people, because young people need to know, like, hey, I know you want to flee the city, but hey, it's worth it to stick around here. We're changing the leadership. We're changing the inclusivity here in the city. But I've utilized all the social media platforms. That's why a lot of people know about me first and foremost, because we do things, we dump a little money here and there into boosting the ad to make sure everybody reaches it. But a lot of the time when you're talking about neighborhood association meetings, I canvass with the neighborhood associations. I haven't done as much as I should in Vermont, but here, Hudson, Blair Park, Kendall Hills, North Park, I've canvassed with the lead to go invite people to these meetings. Whether or not they have regular meetings is a different story, but that's something I can encourage as well.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. We're going to go ahead and go on to maybe one or two more questions, depending on the amount of time that we take up. So the next question, and again, we're going to start with Mr. Nickel. And this is exactly the way it's written. Why should I vote for you?
I'm not bought. I'm not bought, folks. You're my boss. I listen to you. So, to me, a council member's job is really fairly simple. Our job is to ensure we have a safe, clean, desirable city, a city you want to live in. And the way we do that is by listening to you and finding out what exactly we need to do to make sure our city is safe, clean, and desirable. And then when we get up on that dais, do what we said we were going to do. And in the context of that, understand how to work with each other. I was always criticized. Why are you working with that council? I was very interesting. When I got elected the first time, people said, are you on the red coats or the yellow coats? I said, what is a red coat? What is a yellow coat? Or are you with the mayor, or are you with the former city attorney? I said, I'm for the people. I'm with the people who elected me. Let's get back to that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel. Mrs. Ward?
You want change. Everybody keeps saying, we want change. Well, if you want change, you can vote for me, because that's why I'm running. I got tired of hearing, they all keep voting for the same thing. Well, that's why I decided to run. I decided to use my own money and run so that I can stop saying, why is our city this way? At least I can say that I decided to run so I can make a difference. You can vote for me so you can say that I voted for change. I'm here because I'm a neighbor, and I wanted a different and better city. And I wanted to vote for change, so I decided to run. So I can stop saying that, you know what? I'm tired of this city looking like this, and I want change. Well, guess what? Here I am. If you want change, you can vote for me, and you can say that you voted for change, because I'm not bought. I don't have money in there from the mayor or from a trucking company that has 63 trucks and warehouses. I'm here. You can vote for change.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Councilmember Reynoso.
You should reelect me because you want a council member who's not afraid to make the tough decisions, one who answers your call all the time, but you want one more so than anything that holds developers accountable, that makes sure that trucks are not in the neighborhoods, that encourages small business not only through literally promoting them, but securing small business grants, by making sure that artists and entrepreneurs have a place in this city forever, that we do it sustainably, that community benefits agreements are the way of massive development, that warehouses don't just get plopped into your neighborhood just because they're here and they're good for business. That's not good for people, and it never has been. You're looking at a council member who's been sitting here before. You elected me when I was 28 years old, and you did it for a reason. Not because it was new and it was super creative, but because it was honest, because it was real, because you saw and heard things out of my mouth and continue to hear the same things up there as your sitting council member. I've never been afraid to be the one no vote, even when it doesn't feel good and maybe you think that it looks dumb, because I'm never afraid to represent you in the most authentic way possible. That's what you get by re-electing Councilman Ben Reynoso. So I asked for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. We're going to have an opportunity for one last question, and then we'll move on to closing statements. We will pay millions in police malpractice lawsuits. This goes beyond the liability insurance funding the city has, dipping into city funding that can go towards fixing roads, improving parks, helping small businesses, infrastructure, etc. The San Bernardino Police Department also receives the majority of the city's budget, yet the public safety in our city is lacking. There is a thin line here. How do you hold police accountable? Mr. Nickel.
Well, I'm not going to blame our police department. I think you have to have, public safety is the job of local government primarily. Our job is to, again, provide for a safe, clean, prosperous city. If you don't have a safe city, you can't have a clean city, you can't have a prosperous city. If it's not safe, you can't have the others. You can't have an unsafe, clean, prosperous city. Doesn't work. So your police, your law enforcement is going to be logically the largest component of your city budget. It will be. That said, why do we have so many issues? Do we actually have more issues than other departments? Well, one of the challenges we've had is a lot of turnover in our police department. This is a tough city to be a police officer in. So guess what happens? The really good ones, as soon as they can leave, they go somewhere else. The job as a council member is to not only make sure we have a police department, but we create the quality of life, the conditions in our city that ensure that this is a desirable city, not only for our residents, but for the police officers that we need to stay here and do the good job they do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel. Mrs. Ward.
We need to support our police. Our police department is doing a really good job right now. I see the changes that they've done since we've had our chief. Chief Goodman's doing a wonderful job. What I'd like to see is more patrol on the north end. I honestly don't remember the last time I've seen a police car come up our neighborhood. That's just my neighborhood. I'd like to see them implementing that, hey, you know what? Go up the north end just as part of a routine patrol. That's what I would like to see. Because I believe that with more patrolling, there's less crime. So as city council person, I would say, implement patrolling the north end. That could just be routine patrols. So we need to ensure that more patrolling, that reduces crimes. If you see a police officer and you know them, just knowing that they're gonna be in your neighborhood, I'm not saying that make that where you know that, hey, at 10:30, we're gonna see the police, but just implementing routine patrols in your neighborhood.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Councilmember Reynoso.
The new chief has been doing a great job. He really has. He inherited a police department that had different directives, we've come to find out. And unfortunately, through a lot of things that I can't give you details for because that's what we're discussing in closed session. What I can give you is public information. And it looks like legal fees and the actual settlements that have been paid, that's public information. Since 2021, we've paid about $11 million in police malpractice. And that's not indicative of every police officer, as I mentioned up here. A few bad apples do not represent the entire department. But to say that I'm okay with that as a council member is not something that we want to encourage further. And so I've been working with the chief and trying to bring back the North End Police Substation because he said verbatim to me, by establishing a North End Police Substation, which was unfortunately taken during the bankruptcy, some hard decisions were made, that you would increase patrols because that would be their hub to go in and out of. But these are the things that we need. We need better response times, and it looks like implementing a police substation. I might not have the police union endorsement because I've held them accountable, maybe a little too publicly before, but what I am doing is increasing the police on our force, and although our budget has gone up, the original police budget was 64%, but our revenues have gone up, but that number has gone up a little bit too, but it's down to 53%. And so we have opportunities to invest in other places, but also encourage our police.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. Now for closing statements, we're going to give you 1 minute each to provide your closing statement, and because we're obviously at the end of the forum. So this statement should be something that you provide addressing anything you would like, and any last words that you would like the audience to hear from you. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Mrs. Ward.
I would appreciate your vote. I'm a businesswoman with 33 years of experience that I could bring to the table. I won't be another yes vote. I'll be a vote for the constituents that would take that to the table and I would appreciate anything that you could do to help me get your vote to the table. It would not be just my vote, it would be the constituents' vote so that you could have your say when the agenda comes up, and I would help get your vote that, like, it would be a help to take change for San Bernardino to the table, for us to have a better city, so that we could say that we're different, we're better, and our future is definitely going to be, you know, changing San Bernardino to be the better place where our kids, our grandkids, could say that they're happy to live in a safer city, and we can make a difference, and we could look better than Redlands, better than Rialto. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it. You came out to see me this Saturday afternoon, and thank you to the Women's League. I appreciate your time as well.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ward. Councilmember Reynoso?
It's been the greatest privilege of my life, to be honest with you, to represent you since 2020. In 2020, we didn't think we had a chance, especially on paper, but it happened and we won big. And I've continued to bring forward that leadership that's extremely authentic, real. It reaches every age and population, every racial demographic, because this is a city that deserves a new narrative, a narrative that we're not broke. I appreciate what Henry said about crying broke. We're not broke, and we don't have to act like we're broke until the end of time. What we need to do now is have critical investment in our community. You're talking about affordable housing. You're talking about career employment opportunities through boosting our union trades, boosting a lot of the apprenticeship programs that exist in the area, increasing the pipelines through partnerships with Valley College, Cal State San Bernardino, SBC USD. We have some of the most educated people here in the city that do not have the opportunity to live here. And so one of the bold things that I mentioned before was rent control and things of that nature that allow for people to get a grip on their finances, to take a hold of their future. And so a vote for Ben Reynoso is a vote for the future of San Bernardino, for keeping young people and all people in the place that they love and call home for the foreseeable future and beyond.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reynoso. Mr. Nickel?
Well, I just want to thank the league and those that organized this. I want to thank the fellow candidates up here, those of you that did make it. We got the notice of this over a month ago, so quite frankly, all 5 of us should be here. The reason I'm wearing what I'm wearing right now, we're out knocking on doors today. I took time out of my day knocking on doors to come here because I think it is important. And as a council member, I always felt it was important to meet with our constituents, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient, even when I have 1,000 other things I could be doing. I want to be here because listening to those questions helps me understand what I need to do as a council member. It was a great honor. As Ben said, it is a great honor to serve this city. This is a great place, and we have I believe we have a great future. I do. I'm not a pessimist. I chose to move back here 15 years ago. I was in my 20s, YOLO, living my life. And I said, and you, as a young person, you do think YOLO. It's like, live like there's no tomorrow. But today, I believe I'm living for tomorrow. And that's why I'm here, because I do believe San Bernardino's better days are coming. And we've accomplished a lot. I'd be honored to earn your vote. henrynickel.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nickel. And we have now reached the end of this candidate forum. And we thank, of course, the candidates that are here, that are present, made the time to be here today. But we also want to thank everyone that supported this, KVCR, the League of Women Voters, San Bernardino area, the Inland Empire Labor Council, Warehouse Worker Resource Center, Just San Bernardino, and First Baptist Church of San Bernardino for allowing us to use this wonderful venue. We thank everybody. We thank you for your time and taking the time to be here with us this afternoon. And we wish you a very good rest of your day. Thank you.